so I first want to start by saying something that has taken me years of therapy to say. I'm not a scientist. I'm an engineer. So, sorry, or I don't know. So I'm going to tell you about my work, which is basically just I build systems that get people to collaborate by the millions. That's basically what I do. So I'm going to tell you about some of the projects that I've worked on. In particular, I'm going to tell you about the ones that have worked and not the ones that haven't worked. I won't tell you about those. There's many of them. Okay, so the first project that I worked on in this whole area is a project called the ESP game that I worked on in 2002. So this project, it started with the following. Turns out computers can't recognize what's inside an image. They still can't. They cannot tell you whether an image contains a cat or a dog. It just doesn't work very well. But having a program that can do that, or a method that can do that, has several applications in practice. For example, you've all seen image search. Whenever you search for images on Google, imagine you search for images of dogs. Since there's no computer program out there that can tell you whether an arbitrary image from the web contains a dog or not, the way image search has worked is basically by using file names or HTML text. So if you search for a dog, you get back a lot of images that somebody named dog.jpg. The problem with this method is that it doesn't work very well because there's no guarantee that somebody named the image correctly, for example. So what I did was, instead of trying to use that information to do image search, I made a game, and it was a game called the ESP game that happened to be extremely popular. It was in total played by about 20 million people. And this game, the way it worked is basically, it was a very simple game. It's a two-player game. When you go there, you get randomly paired with somebody else wanting to play the game. It's a complete stranger. So it's you and a total stranger. You're not allowed to communicate. You're not told anything about them. It's just a total stranger. And now, the goal of the game is you're both given the same image, and now you're told to type whatever the other guy's typing. And it turns out that what people do is they type words that are related to the image that they can both see. So they're basically both tagging the same image. And then basically both players are typing a lot of words related to the common image until one of player one's words is equal to one of player two's words. They agree, and they get points. And this word that the two players agree on is usually a very good label for the image because it comes from two relatively independent sources. Okay, so that was the idea of the game. As Nosh said, Google actually acquired this game. They changed the name to the Google Image Labeler. And then they used it to label a very large fraction of images on the web, and from that, learn how to do better image search. And now image search got a lot better, and then there was no need for the game, so it's done. It worked. Okay, so that was the first project that I worked on in this area. The second project that I worked on is one called reCAPTCHA, which I did in about 2007 is when we started reCAPTCHA. So this project started from the following. Those distorted characters that you have to type all over the internet. They're very annoying. They're called CAPTCHAs. I was one of the people who invented them about like 12 years ago. Turns out that thing there, the reason those distorted characters are there are to make sure that you, the entity filling out the form, are actually a human and not some sort of computer program that was written to submit the form millions and millions of times. And the reason it works is because humans have no trouble reading these distorted characters, but computer programs can't do it as well yet. So for example, whenever in Ticketmaster, whenever you're buying tickets in Ticketmaster, the reason the CAPTCHA is there, the reason the distorted characters are there, are to make sure that you are not a scalper who wrote a program to obtain millions of tickets millions of times. So now it turns out that about 200 million of these are typed every day by people around the world. And when I first heard this number, I was quite proud of myself. I thought, look at the impact that my research has had. But then I started feeling bad, because the thing is, each time you type one of these, essentially you waste 10 seconds of your time. Not only is it annoying, but also you waste about 10 seconds of your time. And if you multiply that by 200 million, you get that humanity as a whole is wasting about 500,000 hours every day typing these annoying CAPTCHAs. So then I started feeling bad, and I started thinking, is there any way in which we can use this effort for something that is good for humanity? So here's the thing. While you're typing a CAPTCHA, your brain is doing something amazing. Your brain is doing something that computers cannot yet do. So can we get it to do something useful? And the answer to that was yes, and this was the reCAPTCHA project, where here the idea is that nowadays, while you're typing a CAPTCHA, not only are you authenticating yourself as a human, but in addition, you're also helping us to digitize books. So let me explain roughly how that works. So there's a lot of projects out there trying to digitize books. Google has one, the Internet Archive has one. Basically, they're taking old books. You've seen those things, right? Like the physical thing. Okay, so you're taking old books and you're scanning them. Now, scanning a book is like taking a digital photograph of every page of the book. It gives you an image for every page of the book. The next step in the process is that the computer needs to be able to decipher all of the words in those images. That's done using a technology called OCR, for optical character recognition. which takes an image of a word and tries to decipher it. The problem with OCR is that it's not perfect, especially for older books where the ink has faded. The computer cannot recognize a lot of the words. So for example, for things that were written more than 50 years ago, approximately 30% of the words cannot be recognized by the computer. So what we're doing now is we're taking all the words that the computer cannot recognize and we're getting people to read them for us while they type a CAPTCHA on the internet. Okay, so these words, next time you type a CAPTCHA, these words that you're typing are actually words that are coming directly from books that have been digitized that the computer could not recognize. And we're using what you're typing to help digitize the book. Now, the reason there are two words, so nowadays there are two words with the reCAPTCHA instead of just one. The reason there are two words is because we use one of the words. For one of them, we already know the answer. And we use it to figure out whether you're actually a human or not. That's the one that we use to figure out whether we should let you buy tickets or not. And then the other one is a new word that we don't know the answer. Now, we don't tell you which one's which. We just say, please type both. And if you type the correct word for the one for which we already knew the answer, we assume you're a human. And we also get some confidence that you typed the other word correctly. And if we give the same new word to a bunch of different people, and all of them agree that the new word is something, whatever it is, they all agree, then we get one more word digitized with very high quality. This is basically how it works. To date, I don't know the total number, I don't know the latest number, but I know we're doing about 120 million words a day, which is the equivalent of about 2.5 million books a year, all being digitized one word at a time by just having people type CAPTCHAs on the internet. Now, since we're doing so many words, funny things can happen. And it's especially true because, see, nowadays we're giving people two randomly chosen words right next to each other, so funny things can happen. So for example, we showed this word. There's nothing wrong with this, it's just the word Christians. But if you put it along with another randomly chosen word right next to it, bad things can happen. So we showed this. But it's even worse because the particular, so reCAPTCHA is used by hundreds of thousands of websites. The particular website where we showed this happened to be called the Embassy of the Kingdom of God. So, okay, whoops. Here's another really bad one, johnedwards.com. So we keep on insulting people left and right. And of course, there's not much we can do because one of the words, we don't actually know what it is. We're just putting a random word in there. We don't know what it is. So there's not much we can do. But it's not just insults. I mean, we're insulting people left and right, sure. But it's not just insults. It's also interesting stuff. And this has actually given rise to a pretty recent internet phenomenon that's called CAPTCHA art, where here's the idea with CAPTCHA art. Okay. By the way, there's by now hundreds of thousands of examples of CAPTCHA art that people have actually just done in their spare time. Here's how it works. Imagine you're surfing the internet, and suddenly you see a CAPTCHA that you think is interesting, like this one. Then what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to take a screenshot of it. Then, of course, you're supposed to type the CAPTCHA because you help us digitize a book. But then afterwards, you're supposed to draw something that is related to this, something like this. Okay? That is CAPTCHA art. So there's, as I said, there's hundreds of thousands of these. Some of them are cute, like this one. Some of them are funnier, like this one. And some others, like paleontological schwizzle. They have Snoop Dogg. Okay, so there's a lot of these. But it doesn't stop there. With the internet, it can always go one step further. Some CAPTCHAs, like this one, I don't know how many of you know about this. Some CAPTCHAs like this one have created, this is totally weird, have created an entire religion. It's called the Church of Inglip. So Inglip is the name of their god. It came from a CAPTCHA. I have no idea what book this came from, but anyways, a CAPTCHA, a whole religion started. The followers of the religion, the name of the followers also came from a CAPTCHA, and the CAPTCHA was this one. They're called Gropagas. Those are the followers. And the whole religion is as follows. The followers supposedly get their orders from CAPTCHAs. Okay, that's the whole idea. Now, the crazy thing about this is this religion, last I checked, has had close to 10,000 followers. So that's a lot of people. In fact, that is more people. In fact, that is more people than the number of followers that this guy had. If you don't know who this guy is, this is Harold Camping. He predicted that the world would end last summer. He had less followers than the CAPTCHA religion, fortunately. And fortunately, also, I don't know. Unfortunately, fortunately, I don't know. We've established it. Okay. This is just another story about reCAPTCHA. This is I like to tell this story. So everybody here knows what 4chan is, right? Yeah, hopefully everybody. Okay. If you don't know what 4chan is, it's an awesome website. I suggest you visit it, but not at home. Or sorry, at home, not at work. Okay, so 4chan is an awesome website, but basically, it for example, gave rise to Anonymous. There's a lot of smart people, sometimes teenagers. They're very tech savvy, and they like to do funny stuff on the internet. One of the things they decided they were going to do is at some point, Time magazine had the poll for the 100 most influential people of the year. They decided that they were going to put it as a poll on the internet, and anybody could vote. And what the 4chan kids decided was that they were going to all vote for the founder of 4chan, a guy named Moot. Actually, his name is Chris Poole, but his username is Moot. They decided they were going to make him the #1 Time personally. It wasn't Obama, it was him. And they started voting like crazy for the vote for Moot, and then he was the #1. I don't know if you can see it very well, but for example, all the other people had, like 1 million votes. He had 12 million votes. Then the 4chan guys had so much control over this poll that actually they decided, well, of course Moot's going to win. We're killing everybody. They decided to start rearranging all the other names so that the first letters spelled something. So they were like, it spelled marble cake, also the game, or something, something that means something for them. They had so much control over this poll that this was what was happening. At some point, Time magazine realized that something was weird. So they contacted us at reCAPTCHA, and they said, well, can we use reCAPTCHA to stop people from, because what they were doing actually is they were writing a program that was voting like crazy. So can we use reCAPTCHA to stop this? And so we put a reCAPTCHA in there. So before you had to vote, you had to type a CAPTCHA. So the program broke. So basically, the program broke. And then their pretty little order started getting messed up. So it was out of order. And then the 4chan guys were not happy about that. So what they decided to do is, well, they decided to figure out how to break reCAPTCHA. So then we had about 5,000 very smart people all trying to figure out how to break reCAPTCHA. They even went and read our science paper to see how it works. And then they figured out that, oh, it uses this, we use 2 words, and it's this kind of self-fulfilling system where, like, after enough people agree on one word, that word becomes a check word. They decided that. They realized that. And then they thought, well, why don't we do the following? They were going to pick the word that we didn't know the answer for, and they were going to all type the same thing for that. They picked penis. That was what they picked. So they thought, well, we'll do that, and then not only that, also all digitized books from now on, they'll just read like penis, 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 penis. So that's what they tried to do, and then for a while we were getting tens of thousands of solutions that was just penis, 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 penis. Fortunately, it was tens of thousands of solutions. At the time, we were receiving about 70 million solutions a day. So basically, they didn't do anything, but it's very funny that they tried to do this. It's just a funny story. Okay, so that's 4chan against reCAPTCHA. Okay, this is my favorite number of the reCAPTCHA project. This is the total number of distinct people that have ever helped us digitize at least one word out of a book through reCAPTCHA. So about 13% of the world's population has helped us digitize at least one word out of a book through reCAPTCHA. And it is numbers like these that motivate my research. So basically, the main question that motivates my work is the following. If you look at humanity's really large-scale achievements, these really big things that humanity has done, the historical, huge things, for example, the pyramids of Egypt, or the Panama Canal, or putting a man on the moon, there's a curious fact about them, and it is that all of them were done with about the same number of people. All of them were done with about 100,000 people. And the reason for that is because before the internet, coordinating more than 100,000 people was essentially impossible. Basically, it was just not possible. But see, now with the internet, I just showed you a project where we've got 950 million people to help us digitize humanity's knowledge. So the question that motivates my work is, if we can put a man on the moon with 100,000, what can we do with 100 million? That's what I'm trying to figure out. So let me talk about, so I just talked about the previous projects that I've worked on. Let me talk about the project that I'm currently working on. And then afterwards, I want to talk about the project that I want to work on next, but I haven't started. Okay? So the one that I'm working on right now started with the following. It's a project. In fact, we just launched it this week. It's called Duolingo. And it started with the following question. We started about 2.5 years ago with the following question. How can we get 100 million people translating the web into every major language for free? Okay, so there's a lot of things to say about this question. First of all, translating the web. So right now, it's funny, we call it the World Wide Web, but it's kind of partitioned pretty much into multiple different languages, right? A very large fraction of it is in English, and if you don't know English, you can't access it. But there's also fractions in Spanish and all the other languages, and if you don't know those languages, you can't access. So I would like to translate all of the web into every major language. That's what I would like to do. Now, When we started working on this, we thought, well, why can't we just use computers? Why can't we use machine translation? For example, Google has Google Translate. It's gotten better over the years. Why can't we use it? The problem is it's not very good. In fact, you would never see a book translated by Google Translate yet. It just doesn't work as well yet. Okay? And probably it won't be another 20 or 30 years until it works really well. Let me just give you an example. This is something that we found that was translated with Google Translate from from Japanese into English in a forum about Java. So let me just, I'll show you the translation. So it starts as follows. I'll just let you read, by the way. So first, they're just apologizing for the fact that this is a computer translation. Now remember, this is a question about Java. This is supposed to be a question about Java. So then comes the preamble to the question. Then comes the first part of the question. Then comes my favorite part of the question. And then comes my favorite part of the whole message. Okay, so we need humans. Okay, so again, the question is, how do we get 100 million people? Oh, so we need humans to translate the web, but we can't just use like 10 people or 50 people, right? This is a huge task, translating the whole web. It's going to require millions of people. So we need millions of people translating the web. The other thing is, I want to do it for free. The reason for that is because if we were to pay professional translators to translate the web, it would cost a boatload of money. For example, translating only Wikipedia, which is a tiny, tiny fraction of the web, to just one other language, Spanish. So Wikipedia exists in Spanish, but it's about 20% the size of English. Translated the other 80% into Spanish would cost between $50 and $100 million. So if we wanted to do the whole web, forget it. So this is what I want to do. Now, this is what you want to do. When we started working on it, we pretty quickly got stuck. And the two things we got stuck on are the following. These two big obstacles. Okay, the first one is a lack of bilinguals. I don't even know if there's 100 million people out there who use the web who are bilingual enough to help me translate. And even if there are, there's just not that many of them. I would have to reach them all. Okay, that's a huge problem. The second problem is a lack of motivation. How am I going to motivate people to translate the web for free? This is something that you normally have to pay people to do. How am I going to motivate them to do it for free? So we were stuck on this for a while until actually we realized there's a way to solve both of these problems with the same solution. There's a way to kill two birds with one stone here. And that is by transforming language translation into something that millions of people really, really want to do, and that also helps with the problem of lack of bilinguals. And that is language education. Okay, so turns out, today, there are about 1.2 billion people around the world learning a foreign language. People really, really want to learn a foreign language. And it's not just because they're being forced to do so in school. For example, in the United States alone, there are over 5 million people who've paid over $500 for software to learn a foreign language. Okay, so people really, really want to learn a foreign language. So what we've been working on for the last couple of years is a website called Duolingo, where the idea with Duolingo is that you learn a new language while simultaneously translating the web. Okay, so you learn by doing. That's the idea. So the website is a free language learning website. You can go there to learn a new language. It's 100% free. And when you get there, the way you learn, if you're just a very beginner, what happens is we give you very, very simple sentences from the web to translate. We just give you a sentence and we say, please translate this. And if you don't know any of the words, you can click on them and we tell you what that word means. And then you get to translate because they're very, very simple sentences. And then once you translate a sentence, you get to see how other people translated it. And then that way you start learning. And then the more sentences you do, the more complex sentences we give you. And then that's basically how it works. Okay, let me play you a video, hopefully. I think I connected the... Okay, we'll see if this works.
It's a big world out there, billions of us trying to live, love, prosper, and make sense of our brief time on this planet. Since the dawn of humanity, we've been passing information from one person to another through a common language. Unfortunately, you can't communicate with others without knowing or learning their language first. A similar issue has manifested on the web, where text can be penned in dozens of languages, each of which demands a reader's fluency. We've developed an elegant solution to both problems, a way for you to learn a language for free, while at the same time helping to translate text from the web enabling a wealth of language-shackled information to be liberated for all of humanity. It's called Duolingo. Here's how it works. Let's say you're a native English speaker who wants to learn Spanish. We start by giving you a sentence from a Spanish website and asking you to translate it. Wait, back up. How can you translate a language you don't know? First, Duolingo only gives you sentences that fit your language level. Beginners get the really simple sentences from the web, and advanced users get the more complex ones. This way, everybody becomes a valuable translator. And second, if you're really lost, you can always see possible translations for words you don't know. Afterwards, Duolingo helps you understand and memorize the words you hovered over through educational examples. You can also vote on the quality of other students' translations, which helps you learn by seeing how others translated the same sentence. And because you create valuable translations while you learn, we return the favor by offering Duolingo completely free of charge. No ads, no hidden fees, no subscriptions, just free. To put the potential benefit of Duolingo into perspective, think about this. If 1 million people would use Duolingo to learn, the entirety of English Wikipedia could be translated to Spanish in just 80 hours. Duolingo. Learn a language while translating the web.
Okay, so that was our promotional video. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So we actually launched Duolingo this week. It was on Tuesday. So now anybody can go and sign up to Duolingo. And so far people, and also for about 6 months, we've been testing it on private beta by invitation only. We've gotten several 100,000 people as testers, and so far people are loving it. Let me just show you some of the things that people have said about Duolingo. I like that. Yeah, I like that too. And some of the stuff, it's really all positive stuff. Now, some of the stuff gets a little creepy. So here's this one guy. Yeah. 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 Okay, anyways, people really like it, and one of the reasons why people really like it is because they're able to learn with real-world content. So as opposed to learning with these really made-up sentences, we do have some of the made-up sentences, to teach you some of the concepts, but pretty quickly you start interacting with real-world content. So imagine learning English by helping to translate the New York Times, for example. It's much more rewarding, and you get to see a whole story, etc. So this is one of the reasons people really like it. And in tests that we've done, so far we've only done small-scale tests. We're starting to run a very large-scale test. But in the pilot test that we've done, people learn with Duolingo as well as they do with the leading language learning software out there, which is Rosetta Stone. So people do learn as well, which is really good. But perhaps more surprisingly, the translations that we get, we didn't know if they were going to be very accurate. In particular, it's because they're being done by people who are just learning a language, so they could be really crappy. But fortunately, the translations that we're getting are in fact as accurate as those from professional language translators. Now, of course, we play a trick here. Each sentence gets translated by a bunch of people who are learners, and then they themselves pick the best one. But that best one happens to be as good as those from professional language translators. So let me just give you one example. This is a translation. This is the Duolingo translation. Below is the professional translation, which we paid 20 cents a word for. As you can see, it's pretty much identical. Okay. There's a funny thing about this. This was actually translated from German into English. The funny thing is that last thing is an idiom. The straw that breaks the camel's back is an idiom. It turns out that it's an idiom in German too, but in German they say, or in this case, they said it very differently. They said it's the drop that makes the barrel overflow. The professional translator figured out that it meant it's the straw that breaks the camel's back, but also at least one of the users in Duolingo, the one that got picked, figured out that it's also the straw that breaks the camel's back. So it's an amazing thing. They figured it out. It's funny. They saw that the words, they could see what the words mean. So they saw, drop that makes the barrel overflow, and then they're like, the way you would say that in English is straw that breaks the camel's back. So it's good. Now, by the way, the translations are being done by people who are natives in English. They're translating from in this case from German into English. So the fluency of this is going to be really good because these are native English speakers. Okay, so the translations are really good. Now, probably the biggest problem that we've had with Duolingo, one of the reasons why it basically took us 2 years to build this website, was it's a huge optimization problem because we need to optimize. We have this huge amount of documents that need to be translated. And then we have all these people who are learning. The optimization is who translates what. And there's a lot of constraints for this because we need to make sure that it's of the appropriate difficulty. We need to make sure that whoever is translating it is also learning with it. I mean, we can't give them something too easy because then they're not learning. We can't give them something too hard because then they can't do it. And also, it has to be the case that we are going as fast as possible because we're going to need a lot of people. We're going to need to go really fast because the web is huge. So it's been a huge optimization problem. But now we have a pretty good algorithm that basically routes the documents to the right person. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. Okay. Now, probably the reason why I'm most excited about Duolingo is because I think it's a much better business model for education, or a much fairer business model for education. In the case, see, right now, the business model for education, at least language education or software language education, is the student pays. And in particular, if we're talking in reality, the student pays $500 to Rosetta Stone. That's the current business model for language education. The problem with that is that the vast majority of the world doesn't have an extra $500 laying around. Whereas with Duolingo, it's 100% free to learn. And the reason it's free to learn is because while you're learning, you're producing value. You're producing these translations. So you're paying, but you're paying with your time. But the magical thing is this is time that would have had to be spent anyways learning. Okay, so you're getting something out of nothing. And it's a much better business model for education because you can learn for free. Okay, so I'm very excited about that. So this is the website, duolingo.com, if you want to see it. So that's all I want to say about Duolingo. By the way, are there any questions? I don't know if this, yes, go ahead. Okay, the question was, how do you deal with the bootstrapping problem? You need some initial translations. Yeah, we made them ourselves. Well, we hired somebody to make them. So we translated about 10,000 sentences ourselves. That was the beginning. And so, in fact, adding a new language to Duolingo, that's how you add a new language to Duolingo. We've made it so that you translate 10,000 sentences, and now you can add a new language to Duolingo. That's the bootstrapping problem. And it costs $20,000, basically. That's it, to add a new language. Yes, go ahead.
So this works for Western languages and alphabet and stuff. So how about
okay, so your
Chinese,
question is,
Japanese?
This works for Western languages. What about, say, Chinese?
Yeah.
I have no idea. I mean, I'm just being honest. I think it'll work. In fact, we've started working on Chinese. I cannot tell you that it will work because we haven't finished it. But it looks like it will. It looks like it will. But there's all kinds of extra challenges that we'll have to, I mean, the exact same thing won't work, but I think we'll be able to make it work. Will it work for all languages? I don't know. But at least I want to make it work for the top, 15 languages. Yes, I don't.
Hold on. Sorry, thanks. Hi. This translation is done one sentence at a time, is it? So how do you, or do you somehow try to solve problem of coreference? Because that's a big problem in machine translation.
So your question is, translation is done to one sentence at a time. That's not good enough. And it's true. It's not good enough. But we do it one sentence at a time, but we always show context. So people always have the context of what comes before and what comes after. And that really helps. In fact, we were stupid enough at first to think that we could get it done all without context. And that doesn't work. In fact, there's a pretty high error rate if you do that. It's about 10%. As soon as the word they is used, you're screwed. I mean, it just doesn't work. You've asked the question, so yes? Oh, there's a lot of, that's a funny thing. We basically have trained machine classifiers for it. But I can tell you they're very different per language. And I can tell you the features that we use are also pretty different per language. It turns out that in Spanish, the complexity is measured by two things: length and the use of these things called clitic pronouns. If you don't know what that is, it doesn't matter. But it's this weird thing that in Spanish, that makes the thing very complex. In German, it's different. In German, it's length also, but in there, it depends on what case it is. If you don't know what case it is, it doesn't matter. But anyways, there's these features that we use per language And we've trained it, by now we've trained it with tens of thousands of people, and it's pretty good. It's not perfect, but the weird thing is measuring complexity. There's a lot of algorithms to try to measure complexity of text. For example, there's this thing called the Flesch-Kincaid score or whatever. Those completely do not work for us because they're made to measure complexity of text for native speakers of that language. And the way they work is by saying, well, words with a lot of syllables are hard. They're not for people who are learning a language. In fact, those are relatively pretty easy because usually you only have one meaning. The complexity for translation usually comes from multiple meanings. So yeah, anyways, I'm gonna move on from Duolingo. Oh, one more question, yes?
Let's just get real for a minute.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you, that was a good question. I thought you were gonna ask a question. Okay, so that's Duolingo. Now let me talk about relatively quickly about the project that I want to work on next. If it's really stupid, it's because I haven't started working on it, and a lot of times when I haven't started working on it, my idea may be just really stupid. But this is what I want to do, and I think it'll be good. At least I would love to be able to do it. Okay, so the project starts from the following. I'm from Guatemala. If you don't know about Guatemala, it's suffering from the same problem that most of Latin America is suffering: crime. It's overridden with crime. It's completely and totally overridden with crime. I don't know how to solve it. It's a very complex issue. Possibly legalizing drugs would help, but that's never going to happen, or at least we're not allowed to do it. So the question that I have, and this is what I would like to do, is basically how can we stop crime? But you know, I don't really want to get into laws or anything. Not only that, in a place like Guatemala, the police is useless. I mean, they're probably as corrupt. They're very corrupt. They're useless. So my question is, in a situation like that, how can we coordinate 10 million people to stop crime? So the setting that I have is a place where 99% of the people are not criminals, 1% of the criminals or less, or the people are criminals. How can we get these 99% people? It's amazing that 1% of the population is completely screwing everybody up. How can we coordinate it? And it's because the other 99% are not coordinated enough. How can we coordinate them to stop this tiny, tiny fraction of people who are doing bad stuff? That's what I would like to do. And if you have any really great ideas, tell me about it. I mean, I've thought about all the really simple stuff. I mean, we could take pictures of the crime when it's happening. There's all kinds of stuff like that. I don't know if that'll do it, but I would like to be able to use the web to solve crime. I would like to do that. And in particular, in a place where it actually is needed. I don't think it's very much needed in the US all that much because the police is actually useful here. But for example, in the majority of the world, actually the police is pretty useless. So how can we use the people to stop crime? So that's my project. If you have any ideas, please email me or tell me. I'll do it. Thank you.